So good evening. It is Tuesday, October the 20th. It's just after 7 o'clock. So we will call this meeting of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission to order, and we'll do a roll call. And I think we're still one short of a quorum, but we can still proceed. It's discussion items. We can still proceed through those. But let's start with a roll call.
Brandon Barris,
Present.
Carrie Brown-Tess, Stacy De Lorenzo, James Radel,
Here.
Michelle Guerrera, Elsie Hedgespeth or Andy Rousseau, Cynthia Hoyle, present, Audrey Ishii, Susan Jones, here, Craig Schunkweiler.
Here.
Okay, great. Good evening. Thanks. So yeah, there's 5 of us because Kevin, you aren't, but Craig is, I think, a voting position. So, so we'll go through the agenda anyway, even though we don't have a quorum to, vote on items. Maybe that means we'll wait on approving the minutes, I guess. And we'll see if.
Do you have a correction or addition on?
Yeah, we can still do those. Yep.
On page 8, I guess the third paragraph, Cynthia Hoyle said the city of Portland had reported an increase in accidents. It was 4 intersections located on downhill streets, but the city had reported decreases in 8 other intersections. It was decreases of crashes.
Okay, so the only change was adding the word 8?
And 4. So
Oh,
half
okay.
the number of intersections had an increase.
Okay.
And those they had corrected, but I don't know whether I said that. I don't have enough
Okay.
memory capability to remember that.
Okay, so 4 and 8. Okay,
Yeah.
that's an easy correction. Any other corrections on the minutes? None? Okay, well, maybe we won't vote on the minutes. We'll wait and just to make it official, see if someone else is able to show up, then we'll have a quorum to do that officially. Is there anybody here for public input? I think not. Empty audience tonight. So let's go into our business discussion items and get started on tonight's agenda. The first one is the Bradley Avenue bike lanes. And Craig, good evening. Thanks for coming to present.
Craig Schunkweiler, Assistant City Engineer, and pretty much on the agenda tonight. I'm hoping in the future we get other speakers.
Great, yeah.
I'm sure you guys will get a little better and talk to you.
It's good stuff every month, though. So.
It's your content, we don't give a
So what I want to talk to you about was Bradley Avenue, west of Lincoln, all the way to the west city limits. Public Works, contract right now with patching contractor. They're up there actually this week. Been up there for a couple weeks doing concrete patching. We're spending almost $250,000 on patching that street, and also Goodwin adjacent to there, and Bezeland between Wright and and Goodwin. The patching on Bradley is in lieu of the installation of bike lanes, which at this time would occur early next year to summer, around that time. So what I wanted to do was, oftentimes when we're designing, I'll come to the commission and bring the final preliminary version or whatever, but at this point we have a blank canvas to work from. So I wanted to go through and just talk a little bit and get some feedback from the commission on basically some ideas that I've got for out there, and moreover to come to a consensus on the width of the bike lane and the width of basically other features there. Let me go to Google Map real quick here, and we'll just go up and look in that area. So the eastern limits are Lincoln Avenue at Bradley. We likely, I'm going to zoom into there. I'll be taking some traffic counts here this winter after we get finished with the patching job. We're going to be looking a little bit at the configuration there, but for the most part, the bike lanes would come up from the west and come into the existing intersection, and there would not be separated facilities at that location. This is a fairly heavily traveled intersection. One of the things that I'm going to be looking at separate from this project is we have a fair amount of students that go to 1 North up there at the northwest quadrant. Some observations I've had is they actually get discharged by the MTD down here in the corner, and the students treat the intersection a little bit like a pedestrian scramble, and they walk diagonally across the road. The signal timings aren't such for that safe movement to occur. We have to look into that a little bit further. But for the most part, the intersection would likely stay the configuration you would see here, but the bike lanes would come up to the intersection here. So I just want to point that out. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. To the left here, this is Goodwin Avenue, which comes in and tees into Bradley. And then we have some residential streets here. Our city limits are actually right over here at Carver. So the context of the project for striping would be for bike lanes would be from Carver all the way down to Lincoln, which is a fairly long stretch. This would also be in alignment with our current bicycle master plan to install bike lanes. One caveat that you should be aware of is the north half of Bradley from the western limits over to the church here at Mount Olive, so about where I have my arrow. So it would be, say, from right here down to here is actually, the north half is in the city of Champaign. That's not an Urbana road. You probably wouldn't know that driving your car or bike through there. We are currently not patching that location. That is, we've discussed that with City of Champaign. They didn't have the funds to fix that road. We will not be putting bike lanes on their part of the road. So what'll happen is we'll have bicycle lanes on the south part through this part through here, and when we come from the west, we'll come in, and then we will leave the bike lanes off in this portion out here. One of the policies that we have within Public Works is when we put bicycle lanes on a facility, we want to upgrade the infrastructure. And that's mainly a safety reason. It also promotes bicycling. We want people to ride on basically good pavement. That's why we're investing the money there. But, that is Champagne's road. One of the things that I've got to look into in the future is we have a couple of these roads like this, and whether or not we can come to some type of maintenance agreement or jurisdictional agreement on these odd-shaped type of situations like this. But I wanted to let you know of that context there. I'm just going to zoom in real quick here, and we'll just drop this little man down, and we'll talk a little bit more about the what's out there now and what could be there in the future. So this road, it's really a strange road in the aspect that it's two 20-foot wide lanes. When you get into Champaign, it's actually 4-lane road, or 2 lanes each direction. In Urbana, for whatever reason, it's always been this wide 20-foot lanes. When we get the patching done, we'll be doing some speed studies so we can get speed information of vehicles before, and then we'll get vehicle information after we get the bike lanes in, because part of the work that we'll do here will be to narrow the traffic lanes through this section. I've looked at the accident reports. There are some sideswipe accidents. It's really like I said, strange road. You can be driving down this road in the inside part, and a vehicle passes you on the right, which is kind of startling. We'll fix that and correct that with this project.
Use the eastbound lane for right turn.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They divided into 2.
Right. One of the things, too, that staff did was we did counts in the peak hours at Goodwin and Romine and Matthews and Carver. So we looked at that. That's something that I've got to analyze to see if we do need turn lanes at those locations. Preliminary indication is probably not. We might be able to get by without them. But that's something that when we do these type of it's not just installing bike lanes, but you don't want to create a situation where it's unsafe for bicyclists and motorists at the same time, okay?
But I'm anticipating there will be enough right-turning vehicles southbound on Lincoln that you might need one at the intersection of Bradley and Lincoln, a right turn lane.
Right, and that configuration will likely stay the way it is at Bradley and Lincoln.
Okay.
But at Goodwin and Romine and Matthews, I have to analyze the data, but preliminarily it's looking like we would not have to have turn lanes at that location. So we look at this space, and we have basically, like I said, two 20-foot lanes. We'll probably take the vehicle lanes to 11 foot. That gives some additional 9 foot, plus the gutter pan. It's a 2-foot wide gutter pan out there. That can actually be counted as part of the bike lane. That's some of the discussion we should have here tonight. I'm going to pull up. This is just an initial sketch here of basically a concept. What you see here is this would be the vehicle lanes, so these would be 2 11s, and then there would be a buffer, and then the bike lane. That's likely the configuration. The difference between the top and the bottom is merely width. The bottom is showing a 4-foot bike lane, and that does not count the gutter pan. So that would be 4 foot plus 2, which is actually 6 foot. And then that would be a 5-foot buffer. The top is showing a more narrow buffer with actually a 6-foot bike and a 2-foot gutter pan. That's an 8-foot wide. Now, that would be the far extremes. And I want to show you a picture here that I took this last week to give you context. This is on Washington, where we striped bike lanes about 2 years ago. That's a city vehicle in the bike lane, parked just to take the picture of note. But that bike lane is 6 foot wide, okay, and that's in there. The reason I bring that up, we don't want to have, it's desirable to have a wide enough bike lane for perhaps side-by-side riding. That could be a possibility. But you don't want to have it so wide that a vehicle looks at it and the motorist goes in that lane. That right now is 6 foot, so you see that it's still, and that was purposefully done that way, 6 foot wide, still wide enough that, and of course we have the buffer, and a bicyclist can go in the buffer, but in this case the buffer's on the outside, but you can see that the car is still wider than 6 foot. When we look at different guides, and I'm going to just pull up NACTO, which is really the preeminent guide that we're using now, we'll go to the buffered bike lanes. Basically, when we zoom in here, they talk about with buffered bike lanes. Let me go up here. So the combined width of the buffer and the bike lane should be considered the bike lane width, okay? Basically, so that means if you had a 3-foot buffer plus a 4-foot bike lane, that would be a 7 foot, okay? If we go back to their other document, which is just a basic conventional bike lane guideline here, they talk about right here, the desirable bike lane width adjacent to a curb face is 6 feet. That's desirable. AASHTO, which is another guide, which is what the Illinois Department of Transportation follows, has always said 5. But NACTO is talking a little wider at 6 foot. Basically, if we go down here, bike lanes should be made wider than minimum widths whenever possible to provide space for bicyclists to ride side by side in comfort when there is sufficient space. So, we do have that space here. So what I wanted to talk about with the commission was how do we want to break up this visual space here? Do we, we have the 11-foot fixed. Do we have a desire we think as a commission that to narrow up the buffer and have a wider bike lane or have a greater distance from the motoring public, and then you know, where we could either have a 4 or 5 foot bike lane plus the 2 foot gutter. So we have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, any questions or thoughts? Sue?
Well, my thinking was, okay, that the right turn thing is going to be really important. And the transition from bike lanes to no bike lanes, as well as if motorists are in the habit of kind of making it more lanes than it is, then they're going to tend to keep the habits. So I'm wondering if having the buffer smaller and the bike lane wider might be more helpful in that whole narrowness, making it more significant. And it also might make it, like, the transition a little easier for, you know, when it's going to the dashes for vehicles to yield.
Okay.
I was going to ask, how do the speeds here compare to the speeds on Washington, where the bike lanes are, where the buffers are out by the curb and the bikes are brought closer to the vehicles?
Mm-hmm.
You obviously wouldn't want to do that if there's a big speed difference, but if everybody's going slow, maybe it's better for visibility and for the ability of bikes to, if they've got to merge into a turn lane, to be able to get in and out of the vehicle lane when they need to without having to kind of drive over the buffer.
Right.
But obviously, that's not great if you're then putting vehicles close to bikes at massively differential speeds.
Right.
So,
Well, I don't have speed data on either street. I will have it on Bradley, but I will tell you that, so the reason Washington was designed the way it was designed was because there are these large drainage structures on the edge that we didn't have the money to fix. There's, in essence, some drop-offs there. So that created the buffer. We wanted to not get into those, so that's why the configuration that it was. Now, it ends up working out very well when we get into the intersections, because we continue with Cheryl's at that point and everything's in alignment. We'll probably do the same type of thing when we get to Lincoln, where we'll drop the bike lane, go to a Cheryl's situation. That's likely to happen. Now, I will tell you, though, watching traffic out there, and then even talking to my guys in construction this week, speeds, I'm just telling you what I've observed, they're higher, I think, on Bradley. I have observed some people, some motorists go at very high rates of speed. We're talking probably closer to 50 mile an hour on a 30 mile an hour stretch. So I think the buffer here is definitely helpful to get the bicyclist away. I do see bicyclists use this street, though, particularly in the residential area on the west. So that's just something else to keep in mind.
James, and then Cynthia. James?
What kind of slowing methods are you going to use? Are you going to use any rumble strips or anything?
This is a minor arterial, so we would not be slowing traffic, but by default we would slow that by lane narrowing, and that's part of my study that I'll be doing with getting before data. We'll put these in, and then we'll get after data. What studies have shown is you'll see usually a 1 to 3 mile an hour drop in speeds. Now, there's also studies that show more so with the 95th percentile that you get a greater drop, a tremendous drop, and that's where we would see those higher speeds go down. But the 85th percentile, it's 1 to 3 mile an hour is usually the drop in speeds. This will be a good test case. We'll get some good before information, and then we'll again test it in the same period and see what we get after. But on a minor arterial, well, first off, we do not have a traffic calming policy, but if we did have one, it's likely it would not contain arterial streets. It would be on local streets. This is not a local street. This is an arterial street. But with that in mind, again, you know, it might be better to have a wider buffer, perhaps, because of the fact that we do have motorists that, you know, what I see a lot is people are leaving downtown, the core of Urbana, and they're either going back to Champaign or vice versa. You know, they're going from Champaign to Urbana on this stretch.
Cynthia?
Well, I would take the view that I think that having the bike lane be narrower is better, because with the gutter pan, then you have such a wide lane that I think that it would be more of an enticement for drivers to drive in it. And given the fact that we've had people making use of this road without any roadway striping, so they've been innovating, that I think is a behavior we want to make sure to discourage. When we get to the intersection, of course, having the sharrows, and particularly at Lincoln with the right turn sharrow configuration, I think would work well. I also, for our bike plan states that we're designing for the 60th percentile, the casual cyclists.
Right.
They do not like being next to traffic. And on Washington, I regularly see people bicycling in the buffered area. And so I think that having the buffer be wider would be better in this case. On Washington, we had other issues. However, I think I mentioned, and I will mention again, that I immediately got calls from bus operators because they wanted a buffer between them and the cyclists on Washington. And it took me a while to figure out why it felt uncomfortable. And it's because of the center median. If a bicyclist swerved in front of them, they had no place to go. Whereas on this road, you could, zoom off into the other lane, which might not be a good plan either.
Right.
But I think that was something they would prefer, as much separation from the cyclists as possible, given the routine unpredictability of a lot of the cyclists. There are a lot of students, as you said, getting off at this location. And so I was also curious about whether or not we could change the crosswalk design there and put the higher visibility markings in. I don't know if we have a policy on where we put those, but given the number of pedestrians that we have there, I feel like that might be really helpful. The other thing I wondered, and I know this is always a budget consideration, but the crosswalk at Goodwin, it struck me that would be a really great location for a rapid flashing beacon that pedestrians could activate to cross there, because it's kind of a dark spot for nighttime crossing. And if we're going to have bicyclists more routinely using this, we might have more people crossing there. Which side, I'm trying to remember which side of the road, I believe it's on the west side of Goodwin is the wider multi-use path, but I don't remember for sure.
There's on Bradley?
No, on Goodwin going south.
Yeah, it's on the west side of the road.
Yeah, I thought it was on the west side, so, yeah. That might be where it would be good to have that. I don't know. Is it when it crosses over, though, does it cross into... I think we've now got it on the other side, don't we?
I don't think it goes all the way up to.
I see. Okay.
To Goodwin, because it's actually
right
on this side, and then it crosses over down the way.
I see. So over
and it goes west.
At this location it's on. That's why we've got the crosswalk with the bars on the east side of the intersection.
Yeah.
Probably also because it takes you over to the apartment complex.
Right.
So,
Right.
Okay.
Well, concerning the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, we our stance is to really reserve those to critical locations because, and not that this isn't a critical one, but one place that we are looking at them is one south and one north up at Lincoln Avenue.
Yes.
We have
really
issues where students are being dropped off and then they're walking across that multi-lane road. That's something we don't have funding for it right now, but it's under study this winter. So we're really going to take a hard look at that. Then we'll go back to Bradley and Lincoln, and we will look at what we can do with the signal timings, plus if we have to do any other modifications there. That would be separate from this project in entirety.
Sure. Yeah.
But the thought on the RFBs is right now the only place in the city technically is in front of Granger Library on Springfield. We will be installing them at Vine, at Meadowbrook, at Windsor. That's a go. Yeah. I'm also looking and considering those at the middle school at Vine and Fairlawn. That's under study as well. We have concerns there with a high amount of pedestrians, a fair amount of speeds far more traffic than even Bradley there.
Right.
So we want to put them in select locations because what you want is basically not to lose the novelty of them by putting them everywhere, because then people don't, it's just another thing. And we want them to see that and say, oh, wait, there's something very, very much different. This one, even though you see that crossing there, we put one of our engineers out here and count pedestrians and bicyclists and motorists, and I don't recall very much ped traffic at
Okay.
all. When you compare that to Lincoln, there's a ton.
Yeah.
Yes, I've seen them. I just recently, there was
Yeah.
a large herd waiting to cross. No, I agree with you in terms of priority. We need to address mid-block crossings for those apartment complexes. We built the road almost to highway standards, and then we changed the land use.
Yes.
And so we do need to provide for that safe crossing there. So in terms of the priorities you've stated, I completely agree. And narrowing down the width here
Mhm.
will address a lot of the concern in terms of them crossing
Yeah.
at that location. And you're right, there aren't that many people crossing there.
Yeah.
Well, if I can ask a question, in the design guides, they always talk about the allowance of the gutter pan width. And I do a little bit of writing, but not near like what you folks do. We are fixing the gutter pan that's broke. We're also looking at all the drainage grates to make sure that they're bicycle compliant. So when we're done, we'll have a safe facility. But you as bicyclists, what's your thought of the use of the gutter pan?
I avoid them totally. I mean,
Okay.
they catch debris, they're unpredictable, they're,
Mhm.
to me, they're kind of like an emergency shoulder.
Right.
Okay.
So, that's significant, but as far as a rideable surface, they generally aren't.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's true. I don't ride in them routinely, but they are a buffer.
Okay.
I always try to ride at least 3 feet from the curb or the edge of the road.
Okay.
I think this use is very good because it provides the area where the sticks and the leaves and the rocks collect, and then you've got your actual riding surface. What cyclists need is space, between their handlebars and anything else. Their actual bike tires are using up maybe a foot. And if you don't have to worry about a parked car, then we don't have to worry about a lot of this. And the gutter pan usage here is great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So really, it comes down to the combination of this buffer space and, the bike lane. We can go to a 4-foot bike lane, and then if we count the adjacent gutter pan, that's 6 foot of total width.
Mhm.
If we did that, we would have a 5-foot buffer. Or do we want to narrow the buffer? Do we like that? Is there consensus on that? Okay.
Mhm.
So, this is kind of the approach that I want to take in the future, is to get feedback ahead of time.
Yeah.
That way we don't presume. We have some time here. Sometimes we don't have time, but we have
Mhm.
some time. So the next step on this will be, I'll vet all the engineering out. We'll come back with more of a preliminary plan, and then we'll go
Great.
from there. Okay?
Great. Yeah. Thank you.
And then the other thing I want to point out too is I want to look at putting, we put the white bike lane or the bike striping on a white concrete road, but we have troubles with paint sticking to concrete and it fades and things like that. One thing that we may do is inset the grind and inset the markings so that they don't get rubbed off by the plows. And then another thing that I'm interested in looking at is, and we may have to get approval to do this, but bike striping, like these bike symbols here, where instead of it being a white bicyclist on the concrete, it might be a white bicyclist with a green background, which is what we're also talking for with the MCOR project.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe then that has a better pop for visibility too. So I just want to point that out.
Yeah, that's great.
That's all I had, really.
One other comment on this, I think, to me, the trick is, especially where the transitions on both ends of this segment, are messy, and especially at the Lincoln end, where do we expect bikes to go? What else is in our bike network? Do we encourage bikes to cross Lincoln and then continue, down by the county fairgrounds? Or do we don't expect bikes to go up or down Lincoln Avenue? That's not in the network, right? So
That
it's
was actually
those
my first
tricky
thought.
transitions of, well, this segment looks pretty good to me, but now where are they going to go? And is there any wayfinding or anything to help give them maybe some encouragement to just cross Lincoln and get over there on Kohler where it's safer, rather than trying to, signage or something like, bike route continues this way, or something, bike route and an arrow, just so that there's not an encouragement that they end up on Lincoln, because Lincoln is messy.
When they drive, yeah, if you don't know how good Kohler is, you don't know that.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the exciting things we're going to start this winter, I have a new engineer on board, and we're going to be looking into the wayfinding system, and we're going to be planning that out and
Great.
then phasing that out.
Mhm.
And this can be a component of that
Yeah.
too. But within the new bike plan, there's some general guides that will be brought forth to you that Gabe Lewis has developed, and then there's some NACDO guidelines out there. But we're going to be developing a wayfinding system, and then implementation of that system, and we've got some funds to start that next year.
Great. That's really cool.
But that's a good point there. We should always think of where we want them to go, or encourage them to. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Any other comments on this Bradley stuff? Okay.
I just have a
Go ahead.
question regarding the. I guess this would be more a question for Cynthia, being from MTD. I don't know where the buses are going in that area, but I was just thinking if it's an issue of people getting off on the southeast corner and going northwest across, would it be possible to move that bus stop to the other side of Bradley?
Well, then they'll just cross from the southeast corner to the northwest. And that there is a preference to do far side stops when possible. So that, I think, is why they have stopped there. You do not want them crossing in front of the bus. So
Right.
if you stop on the far side of an intersection, they are more normally going to go back toward the intersection.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I guess I was confused as to where the bus stops actually are. So the bus stop is on the northeast side?
I believe
It's
so.
a southeast.
Oh, it's on the southeast corner?
Southeast corner, they stop on the southeast corner currently now and discharge there. Now,
Yeah.
Kevin, engineering has been involved with MTD, and we've been discussing this very issue last year. We have to reinvigorate this discussion. Right now, what the bus does, if we come down here towards the atrium, they stop here, and then they walk across here. So this is a hot spot. And then they also stop here at the southeast corner, and then they walk diagonally across. Then when they get up to Kettering Park, which is right here, they turn the corner, they stop here, and then people walk across this way. Then the bus actually goes up Linview, over to Killarney, and then back down, and then there is also a bus stop on this side. There's been talk about whether or not they could keep students on, but as the MTD had told us, they can't prevent students from getting off. So the issue is really the fact that we have these student housing
Yes.
here, and then we have these bus stops on this major road. So this is one of our issues that we've got to try to tackle, is how do we get people safely across the road?
Right.
So, Craig, what was the reason for the near side stop rather than the far side stop at Bradley?
I don't know. I don't
Okay.
know. I don't know.
Well, we might want to ask, there may be a reason why they had it in that location. I know motorists are more frustrated when the bus crosses the road and then stops again in front of them. And so that creates issues. But there may be another reason why. I mean, those are just general guidelines, but
And you're right, it may be on the downstream side that it might not be advantageous for them to be stopping in traffic. Right now, they're able to stop with a red light, which is
Mhm.
probably, I mean, you weigh out the pros and cons of the near and the far side.
Will you do the street view there and where the stop would be? I'm wondering that building is so close to the corner, it's possible that there's not really a good place for them to let people off over on the other side. Yeah, see, they don't have a good landing spot. If you go back looking toward the east, no, there you
Right
go.
there.
You mean in here?
Yes, they don't
Yeah.
have, right, yeah, they don't have a place for them to get out.
Right.
And there's no
Yeah,
sidewalk.
there's not even a sidewalk, yeah.
Yeah, so that's exactly why they're stopping on the south side, is
Right.
because there's no infrastructure.
Right.
And to meet ADA requirements, they need to have that if at all possible.
Right.
So
Okay.
I'm sure that's why that's happening.
Yeah.
So we have some challenges here, but again, this will be separate from the bike lane issue, but we have
Yeah.
some challenges that we've got to try to solve.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments on Bradley? Okay, well, thank you. I really appreciate the kind of just coming early and getting rough feedback. That's really helpful. Okay, well then let's move on to our next business item, which is the MCOR project update.
So Goodwin Green, last time we talked about bike boxes at length, and that was the configuration you see here. Since that time, and the consultants, to their credit, took a lot of feedback from the bicycle community, who came out really in force to the public meetings there for the MCOR project. And Councilman Smythe had a lot of concerns about this. So they came back with an alternate plan. So I wanted to show you, this is what they had planned with the bike box here, and there was a lot of concerns, particularly about the stale green right hooks. So this is the current configuration here that they're showing. So basically it would be a lot like what we have downtown Urbana right now, which is basically a motorist, if they were going to turn right, would come over into this dashed area. Keep in mind, we typically within city staff don't stripe bike lane symbols like that, because we want motorists to come over into that space. But what you see is what they call a through right movement and then a left movement. Then through here we would have the green markings for the bicyclist, the crossing markings, and then this would be what they call a two-stage turn box, not a bike box, but it's a two-stage turn box here. Wanted to show you, this is a video that I found on YouTube that would just give you an idea of what a two-stage turn box would be. And this is in Salt Lake City.
Interesting.
How much education did they have to do for that?
That's a good question. I don't know.
That just looks really novel.
Mhm. So let me get back to this one.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the concept, that then they would at least get the bicyclists on a two-stage turn out in front of traffic. They wouldn't be able to come up before the bicyclists would come up along the right side here. And I think that was also a concern that the consultants heard, was that, you know, bicyclists are striving hard to get respect from motorists, and what doesn't help with respect is if bicyclists come alongside a motorist and bypass them. But at least here, a bicyclist could come along, and they could, if they were here, and they wanted to go left, they could come over and then just stage here like what we saw in that video.
Mm-hmm.
This plan was ultimately endorsed by city staff, and we feel it's a pretty good compromise. And it's other than the two-stage turn boxes, the configuration as the vehicles and bicycles approach the intersection is like we have elsewhere within the city.
Mm-hmm.
Wright and Green, I'm still waiting on information. I was hoping to bring some information today, and I still don't have it from the consultants. They're really, really diligently studying that intersection, and they're really trying to figure it out, and there's a lot of challenges there. So we
Yeah.
don't have anything, and I was really hoping to bring something today to at least show a
Okay.
concept. I've seen some preliminary stuff, but at this point, there's nothing to report on that.
Okay.
So.
One question about how this works, and then others might have questions too. It looks like this is perhaps optional, that there may be some cyclists who know they're going to plan to make a left turn, and who merge into the left turn lane with the vehicles, and who make their left turn on more of the shorter direct arc,
Right.
as if they're a vehicle, without going to that.
You're correct. This
Sort
is
of
just
two-stage
purely-
turn box.
It's purely optional.
It's purely optional for
Yeah.
those that want to stay over to the right in the bike lane
Right.
and then get into that special box.
Right. One of the challenges that designers have is bicyclists really are operating two different ways. One is they're either a vehicular bicyclist, or they're more of that 60%, and they don't really feel comfortable doing that. And
Yeah.
that's always been the challenge. We have a high percentage, I think, within this community that operate like vehicular cyclists. But a vehicular cyclist could certainly, make a left turn lane there, or even the 60% that we talk about, the casual adult could make that left turn. Or they have the secondary option if they're up there near the stop bar to go across and use the two-stage.
Okay. Any questions or comments? James?
I was going to say, I don't think that the bike boxes would be that bad. I think they work differently in different communities. But I have been in Chicago quite a bit, and I see people doing the two-stage turns naturally. They're like, I'm going to turn.
It's a pedestrian turn.
Is
That's what we call it.
absolutely.
We teach that as a pedestrian turn.
And people are like, I'm going to get into this lane and then I can make a turn. And I don't think there would be too much of an educational problem. When I look at it from this view, and a lot of schematics look odd. It looks a little bit weird, but I think this will work, and I think people will understand it. Give it maybe a semester or two, but I think this will work.
Well, and I like that there's sort of a, if you don't know what you do, you can just follow the regular rules and it won't. And, my thinking was sometimes there's just not that much traffic, so you just don't need it. And which is not might be a whole lot less true in Salt Lake City. But yeah, it seems to make a lot of sense.
We have more traffic on our campus than Salt Lake City. The problem in Salt Lake City is their roads are extraordinarily wide. They are the Western standard of turning your horse and wagon. So they had a challenge with really, really wide intersections and streets. By the way, they just did their first protected intersection. There's video online of that. I think it opened yesterday. I think this will work at Goodwin and Green. I do not think a design like this would work at Wright and Green, and I feel fairly strongly that the bike boxes are going to be the safest design for Wright and Green based on all of the information that I've seen about how we need to improve safety and reduce weaving. One of the things that I would encourage us to do when we consider various types of options for infrastructure, I think it would be really helpful for us to plot out conflict points. Like when you see the diagrams for the difference in number of conflict points when you have a signalized intersection and you have a roundabout. And that would give us a rational basis upon which to sort of analyze the safety, that would give us another piece of information. So, for example, on this one, how many conflict points is this compared to whether there were bike boxes? And I don't know on this one whether that makes a really big difference. You don't have as many weaving movements here as you do at Green and Wright. So I think that this will probably work, and especially having the green markings through the intersection cues the motorists that the bicyclists are going to be there without having to paint it solidly, and we can reduce wear and tear by spacing it in such a way that it's not right in the tire tracks. I think that would be helpful for us too, and I'm really interested to see if sort of embedding the paint will help us with keeping it from getting scraped off in the wintertime. I think that's a great thing to try out. So the other thing is that if we decide that bike boxes would be better, there's nothing to stop us from going back and putting them in. It's paint. There's not a configuration here in terms of the design that we're putting in. And so I think it gives us the opportunity to see how the two-stage turn works here. And the 60% riders are not going to get in the left turn lane if there's traffic. They just are not going to merge across 2 lanes of traffic at this location when there's much traffic to make a left turn. The vehicular cyclists will do it, but on campus, those are not the majority. As we well know, and every year we have anywhere between 6,000 and 7,000 new people showing up who don't know beans about how to bicycle. So one of our goals with this project is that the infrastructure be self-enforcing, that it be clear where people are to be and what they are supposed to do. And that is, I think, a critical component of this. I think that this will work, particularly if we make an effort to provide the education on it, to put the videos out there, talk to the media, have people go out and do it, maybe even have a demonstration with some people, that kind of thing.
Sounds like we got some volunteer there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I'm happy
Yeah.
to help do that. And so I think I think those are all important. I think when you introduce new infrastructure and no one really heard anything about it and how it's supposed to work beforehand, that's when people get really upset. Now, on the other hand, I will say that motorists still ask me how they're supposed to turn around bike lanes, and I always direct them to our video. So,
Yeah.
but the problem is that we have cyclists getting right hooked without any bike infrastructure. I mean, that is not causing the right hooks. That's happening because most cyclists are going to ride close to the right, and then the motorists try and beat them through the intersection.
I have one other question about this configuration. Did the consultants look at the possibility that the bikes get over into that box for the two-stage turn, and then the ped scramble phase comes, and then the bikes decide, well, gee, I'm standing right here next to these peds at the corner, they're all going, I'm going to go too, and like the bikes, get into the bike box, but then when the ped scramble phase comes, they treat themselves like a pedestrian.
I think they're
And is
still
that-
they're still talking the leading bike interval though, so that could
Okay.
help clear.
Okay.
I think I have to confirm with them, but they had talked about the mixing of the two, and they did feel that this would work.
Okay.
I will tell you that.
Okay.
There is a lot going on here, though.
Yeah, it's a busy place.
I want
Cynthia?
to insert a comment on that topic. I would like for us to take a look at not making a requirement that bicyclists not be using the intersection during the pedestrian scramble, but that pedestrians always have the right of way. The reason for that is that in terms of the buses and the other vehicles, clearing the bicycles out of the intersection is more important in terms of conflict than the conflict between a bike and a pedestrian. And what we often have right now is people are waiting. We just recently, in fact, had a complaint from a bicyclist on the cycle track on the right. They were sitting in the cycle track. The light turned green for the vehicles. The bicyclist didn't move, so the bus operator assumed that they were going to wait for the pedestrian phase because you never know what they're going to do there. And so it's very, very confusing, and then it's difficult to see people once you've already started undertaking a turn. So in that case, no one's at fault. It's a design issue, and if they had the option of going with giving pedestrians the right-of-way during the pedestrian scramble, it would additionally help clear the intersection. I'm not advocating that cyclists use the pedestrian phase because it's difficult to do that. You're very likely going to get knocked over and people are going to step in front of you. I think it's much safer to wait, and I hope that, I would like to know about the leading pedestrian phase, because I think that's also an important way to signal to the cyclists to wait if they've got their own signal, and it will help clarify for them that they should wait rather than use the pedestrian phase.
And I think those details will be worked out in what we call phase 2, which is the final plan stage. Right now, this is the preliminary
Yeah.
end of phase 1, so.
Yeah. And if the leading bike interval means that there's a special little signal, a red and a green light with a little bike symbol in it, if that one stays red
Yes.
during the ped scramble
Yes.
phase, that may be an encouragement to
Yes.
hold your horses, let the peds go.
Mhm.
Then we'll have, you'll know that you'll get your chance because your little light will come on in a moment.
Exactly.
And that,
Right.
And
okay.
Chicago found that bicyclists complied to a much greater degree when they had bike signals
Mhm.
at intersections.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So,
Okay. Any other comments on this?
Are we good?
Okay, great. So that is our 2 unfinished business items. The last item for tonight is officially picking a vice chair. And as y'all probably know, that's true. We don't have a quorum to vote. Well, okay, then we can't do that officially. Okay, we can wait and do that next month.
I did want to talk about that, though.
Yeah, okay.
So Barb graciously has done some research, and I think we have a few procedural things that we have to clean up.
Mm-hmm. Bylaws kind of stuff
Yeah.
that we just haven't done in a long time.
Yeah, so if you remember, earlier this year, we passed some bylaws on public input. But we also found out that when the commission was created, it was created by ordinance, and the bylaws were actually rolled into the ordinance. And then a year later, there was an amendment to the ordinance, which changed some of the component of the commission and defined things like quorum and, some of these things that are really not ordinance procedures, but really bylaw procedures.
Mm-hmm.
So what Barb and I were talking, really what needs to happen is we need to bring this commission in alignment with our other commissions. And we have to talk to the city attorney about this, but maybe what we would
Yeah.
do would be to amend the ordinance to formally define the commission, but that the bylaws are created by the commission, and then they can be revised by the commission without having to go back to the city council. So technically, if we do the vice chair, at this very moment, we would have to amend the ordinance.
Yeah.
We have to go back to city council.
Okay.
So we're going to have to do that anyway, but I think what we do is maybe perhaps Barb and I draft up new bylaws, and we do a draft. We roll in the
Yeah.
public input, ones we've already have. We can maybe define any other items that we maybe think are missing. Amend the ordinance to just be for defining the commission, and then we just go from there.
Yeah. Get it all cleaned up.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah.
okay.
That sounds like the right approach to me. and
Okay.
I'm glad you did some digging.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we can talk further about how you want to, I think in this next draft, how you want to, I guess that's the other thing, I guess, do we want to seek direction on how they want to handle the vice chair? Is that something, do you have some thoughts on that, on how other commissions handle vice chair?
Some of them have it where, I don't have the mic on. Some of them have it where the chairman is selected by the mayor, the vice chair is selected by the members of the commission.
Members.
I'm trying to think if there were any others. Some of them have it where it's done on an as-need basis. So when the chair isn't there, then the members present decide who will be the vice chair. So those are the only things that I noticed.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it might be nice to have a standing vice chair just so you kind of know the process. If that's the way other commissions do it, that makes sense to me at least. And yeah, having the mayor pick the chair and then having us pick a vice chair seems logical.
So we'll draft up everything and then try to have it ready
Thanks.
by the next meeting.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, are there any announcements?
Bike summits next week.
Yeah, which day next week?
The 28th.
The 28th is
is
Wednesday.
the Illinois Bike Summit. There is a website for the Bike Summit that has all of the information, including the keynote speakers, the schedule, a variety of events going on. Last count, there were 250 people pre-registered. So it's
Wow.
it's a big event. It's here. It's easy for us to go to. It's not an expensive event, and there are lots of really good information.
Mhm.
Did you want to say something more, Kevin?
Yeah, I was going to mention that we have the privilege of having an ambassador from the League of American Bicyclists coming to sort of give us a little mini consulting trip before the Bike Summit. He'll be at the Bike Summit speaking as well. But his name's Steve Clark. He's done great work in Minnesota. In Minneapolis. I couldn't think of the name of the big city in Minnesota. I forget the other place, but Boulder. Yes.
Okay.
So he knows a lot about biking. But we are planning some sort of tentative events. We still need to firm up all the details and everything. But next Monday night, we were thinking about having sort of a little celebration, probably at about 5:30 in downtown somewhere, sort of to say we're gold level, welcome to our community, and have a little celebration, and then have some sort of announcement and something going on at the committee of the whole meeting that night. And then Tuesday, Steve we'll have him for about half the day, and we are planning to have probably a meeting with him and some of our staff members and other. I think we'll probably invite commissioners, so BPAC folks and some other people. Then we're looking to have a bike ride, and then maybe have a informal lunch meeting with him as well. So stay tuned. You will get more info as we firm up those details.
Great. Okay, so maybe a sort of celebratory event Monday night and more of a meeting and luncheon Tuesday.
Correct.
Okay, great. Yeah, if you can send it out to BPAC members, I'm sure people would be interested. Cool. Any other announcements? Cynthia?
We have made a preliminary date for a league cycling instructor seminar training for our community using some of our Safe Routes to School funding to increase the number of trained and certified instructors in the community. We're looking at the weekend of June 10th through 12th. The choosing June was in part to hopefully engage some of the teachers from the Urbana School District, particularly some PE teachers. So we wanted to do it after school is out, but not too far into the summer. And probably provide some scholarships. In order to go to one of those, you have to have successfully completed Traffic Skills 101. And so in order to have enough people who would like to do that qualified, we'll probably offer the sort of hybrid Traffic Skills 101 where people can take the classroom portion online and to do the 4-hour on bike so that we can offer it more than once. It's difficult to offer the full day and also difficult for people to find the time to do an 8 to 9 hour class on a Saturday. So we'll be looking at dates for doing the other Traffic Skills 101 classes leading up to that in the spring and announce those and hopefully have the league cycling instructor seminar then. as part of my job with the Alta Planning and Design, we've been doing a street safety project in Wichita, Kansas. And one of their goals was to have more league cycling instructors. They had planned, we shot for 12, but in one weekend, they went from 1 LCI in their community to 11. And it was a really good experience. They had a really diverse group of people in terms of skills and backgrounds. And I thought about our community and how there maybe are some people we could strategically recruit that we feel like would bring those additional skills. Like there was one guy in there that loves to do fundraising, some law enforcement folks, someone else who likes to, do they're very technical and their work involves IT support and design. So it really can help broaden out the people that we have engaged in doing bike education in the community.
Cool. June 10 through 12 next summer.
Yes, they
potentially.
start on a Friday evening, so it runs like from 5 to 9, and then all day on a Saturday, and then say from 8 to 2 or 3 on a Sunday. It's a rigorous training. Sue has been through it, and Larry wants to be our instructor, and I understand he's a pretty stern instructor. He was not my instructor, but he's very interested, and he's built a very successful program in Chicago. They've got like 60 LCIs up there, and there are a lot of people in our community who would like to take bike classes, but they don't know where to go. There are people who would like to learn how to ride bikes that don't know how to do it, don't know how to learn. And so I think that there's a large demand in our community, but we haven't been able to provide the support in terms of education, partly because of lack of funding for staff support. It's really hard to pay when your budgets are short for people to do bike education, and that's been a challenge for us.
Okay.
All right, so the other big news is that we just received an updated draft of the bike master plan. So Craig and I are going through our respective parts of the plan. I think Craig probably has more things to go through than I do. But all of our comments, it looks like, have been addressed for the most part, at least on the community development side. So I assume that Public Works has been gone through in as thorough of a way. So hopefully Craig and I can get together, have a meeting about it, and then bring it to you all next time around.
Yeah, it might be, if I look at the schedule, it might be more December, because we need to bring it back to the steering committee. We have to reconvene that committee. We need to let them have time to go through it. That's at least 2-3 weeks, and then by the time that we get their input, and then we really have to make sure that if there's anything really serious, that would get addressed before it would come to BPAC. We also have to, Kevin and I have got to discuss whether or not BPAC and Plan Commission would be a joint meeting or a separate meeting. And then the next steps would get to City Council. But yeah, it's really good news that Regional Plan Commission was able to vet all that out. And city staff, we really did go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and that's what, of course now we got it all back, and we have to. But it's exciting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and in terms of looking at calendars, the way December fits in the calendar this year, the third Tuesday, which would be our meeting night in December, would only be the 15th of December, which that's pretty good. That's pretty far clear of when
Good.
people really leave town for the holidays.
Right.
So usually we don't have a December meeting. Usually we cancel.
Mhm.
But because that would fall so early in the month, the
Mhm.
15th,
Right.
it's probably a meeting we could get a quorum for and have.
And we would have to also look at the Plan Commission meeting time,
Yeah.
and there could be a special meeting perhaps, but,
Mhm.
and it could be where we have, we, as BPAC, we absorb the information and we have to have another meeting,
Yeah.
too, so we'll have to see.
Yeah. Okay.
I have another announcement.
Okay, well, yeah, let us know when it comes to dates for that. I mean, feel free to email, well, judging by tonight's, lack of quorum here, it would be good to email members and say, like, can you confirm one way or another? Could you come on some odd night in December, so that we're sure we get enough folks out?
Right. We only
Okay.
considering that, Chair, I think staff I would like for Barb to send out an email to commission members asking them to notify her if they're not going to be here, because
Yeah.
we really do, 6 is a quorum and we're short, so.
Yeah, please do that, and let's see what, hopefully people will write back and say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry,
Right.
I should have let you know, and now they'll be prompted to next time.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, a little bit of guilt, it's
Yeah.
fine.
So I've got one last
Yeah.
thing. We just, Public Works just completed our annual restriping of all the bike lanes within the city. I don't know if people have noticed that.
A lot of it's restriping,
Yeah, a lot. And we're, our goal is to do this on an annual basis. We weren't able to get it out last year, but one of the things we do too, though, is we take feedback, and there had been some feedback about, particularly like as you approach the intersections, there wasn't long enough dash lines. So we corrected
You
all
ground
those.
some down,
Yeah.
I think, and made longer dash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we filled in some gaps with sharrows per the master plan.
Mhm.
The reason I'm mentioning is I would welcome BPAC's input in the future and the public's if they see things, and as long as they're in alignment with the master plan. We've got 140 centerline miles of streets. So I try to keep track of everything, but I can't keep track of everything, so I need help. So
Yeah.
if there are things that anybody sees, let us know, and we'll try to get it on the next round to correct it. But I don't know, we were pretty happy with everything that we saw. So.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
everything I saw, I liked too. I did notice the bike symbol changed. The Sharrow
It
bike
did.
symbol now is a little different than the bike lane bike symbol, and it's like I can
Mhm.
tell that both are bikes, and they both work. And the Sharrow one is more noticeable now.
Yeah, it's a-
Something
it's
a
a
little bit
little bit-
wider, or
Yeah, a little bit wider and a little bit narrower,
Mhm.
but the individual lines are
Yeah.
narrower, but the symbol itself seems more prominent.
yeah. Even though the paint stripes aren't as wide, the symbol is clearer. You can kind of look at it and really tell what it means and what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
So anyway, everything I've seen on the streets I've been on I could tell a noticeable improvement.
Good.
Any other feedback, places people saw, or?
And you can always email staff.
Yeah.
So
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. Any other announcements before we adjourn here?
We have future topics.
Okay, yeah, future topics. Bike master plan's the only one on the list, which we'll bring soon. Other future topics. Cynthia?
I would like to discuss volunteer snow removal program. I got a hold of that like a bulldog, and so I would like to, if possible in December, if we can pull that off, talk about it. The other thing I would like to propose that we talk about is we have some members I don't think I've seen in over a year. And so maybe we should ask them if they want to continue as members, because I think that's one of the reasons why we have had trouble with quorum. And maybe when we get the ordinance changed and we can look at the bylaws, that's something that we could look at, is that, after a certain number of consecutive, times that they haven't been able to come, then maybe we need to take a look at whether or not that's a good fit for them to be on the
Yeah.
commission.
it
And-
actually, it does contain that language.
do
did
have
find
that.
We already have
We
that.
already
I
have a
thought we did.
standard.
I thought that we did have that in there, and so I guess we can operate with our current bylaws in addressing that and see what we can do about it, because I think that's probably hindering our
Yeah.
activity.
I think we could ask Barb to contact, I know there are a few commissioner members that haven't been here since I've been on the commission, so maybe it is time.
Yeah, I agree. I
To
think it's
see.
completely reasonable to
Yeah.
contact them and just
Yeah.
say, hey, as a courtesy,
Yeah.
is this a meeting you can commit to making?
Right.
Is this, serving on the commission, is that something you can commit to?
Right.
And if not, that's fine, we can,
I think we've already violated our own bylaws. I think it states after a certain number of absences,
they're automatically,
Right.
yeah,
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 but we're,
But we don't want to be mean.
right.
okay. Yeah, yeah. Well, Barb, if you're willing to do a little follow-up on that, it would be much appreciated. Any other future topic suggestions? Okay, well, seeing none, then it is about 8:15, and I will declare this meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.